Okay, so for our project here, what we want to do is we want to set up a series of sheets. Well, actually, just one sheet. That sheet is going to be called A101. All right, and for the name, we're just going to call that sheet Tiny House. All right, so now I'm on page 42 of our Tiny House project, and this is basically a little small preview of what that sheet's going to look like. All right. Under step number 2, this is telling us what we want actually on that sheet, what drawings, what views we're actually going to put on that sheet. But first, let me show you how to first load in our title block for our sheet, and then also create a new sheet. Okay. So to do that, the step here, I'm basically starting with step 1, is let me scroll down here, and all right. Under here, you have sheets. Alright, and this is the sheet I've already created for this project. Let me just double click on there. So it's A101, Tiny House. Alright, that's basically my sheet here. Let me delete it, right, so we can create a new sheet. Okay, so it should at this point all of your projects should look like this. You basically have sheets, but you don't have anything listed underneath there. Alright, so to create a new sheet, here's the step. So you go to click on Sheets, just highlight it basically where it says Sheets, then you right click, and you're going to see the little dialog box will say New Sheet. So I'm going to click New Sheet. All right. By default, you have loaded in here this 30 by 42 E1 title block. That's fine. If you wanted to load a new title block in, which we're not for this project, but we will for other projects, I can load in a title block here. It takes me to the Imperial Library, and I load in a title block from there. But for our project right now, this tiny house project, we're going to use E1 30 by 42. So I click on there and then say OK. Alright, so this creates a new sheet, and you'll notice now under Sheets it's got a little plus sign. Alright, and I've got a A102 unnamed. So what I want to do is rename this one. So I'm going to select the sheet, right click, and say Rename. Alright, so when I do Rename, then I can change it to A101, and I can call this Tiny House. Tiny House. Alright, so now I've got my one sheet that I need for this project. Alright, so now to add views onto a sheet, and remember we want to add these following views here, so our 00 foundation, O2 upper level, and our O1 floor plan. Alright, so to do that, I'm going to go back to the Revit project here, and it's a real simple process of adding drawings onto here, dragging views onto the sheet. It's a simple matter of just dragging and dropping. So I select 00 foundation, and I hold down, I'm basically still holding down on the left mouse button, and it has the little plus sign. Then once I drag it onto the sheet, I let go, and now I can kind of place that drawing anywhere on that sheet I want. So I click on there. Alright, there's 00 foundation. Let's go O1 floor plan, so I click on that one, hold down on the mouse button, drag and drop. And when I let go, it basically allows me to put my sheet on here. Alright, and then O2 upper level, drag and drop. Yeah, so for most of you, yeah, it'll be huge like that. So what that basically means is a little bit of housekeeping on your drawings. All right, so what I want to do is I go to O1 entry level. All right, what you want to do is get this as tight as possible. So I'm going to move my room legend as close to the building as possible. I'm going to take my elevation tags and move them a little bit closer. Maybe not too close. Maybe that's a little too close. But just a little bit closer. Okay.
We're doing that while we're on that level, correct?
Yeah, yep. So right now I moved right back to my O1 entry level plan. Let me go to my 00 foundation plan. I'm going to select these guys and move them a little bit closer. Alright. And O2 upper level. Alright. Oh, there's my color scheme. I'm going to move that a little bit closer to my building. Alright. So now when I go back to my sheet, these things are a little bit closer together. Okay, so a couple things that you're going to want to edit on here. So to move your drawings around, you can just pick the drawing and click on it there, and now I've got the move command and I can move it around. Alright, so I click on the drawing, use the move command, and I can move it back and forth. Alright, now these title blocks, see those little title blocks down here? Notice how this little, particularly on this second floor plan here, let me move that there. That second floor plan, see how long that line is there? Alright, to edit that line, what you do is you select the view, and you'll notice you get the little blue grip out here. And so now you can slide that back over. Alright, so pick the drawing first, see the little blue grip, and you can slide it back and forth to make that a little bit shorter. Alright, on this one here, I'm going to select the view, see the little blue grip, slide it over there. Alright, now if I want to move that around, what I can do is I can just pick the title and move it up. And see the little blue line? It should allow you to line them up, all three of them together. Alright, so you kind of want to move things a little bit close, get them as close together as possible, like that. But just remember, so if you want to shrink down that line, pick the view first, and you can slide it back and forth. If you want to just move the title itself, select the title, hold, and then when you roll your cursor over the top of it, you get the move command, and you move it down, move it up, so on and so forth. Alright. Now, if you want to, you can also work actually on the sheet itself. So if you want to do a lot of these edits to the sheet, sometimes it's easier to do it onto the sheet itself. So to do that, it works a lot like AutoCAD when you've got paper space versus model space. You've got those, you create those viewports in AutoCAD in paper space, and it gives you a view into model space. Well, it kind of works similar here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the view, and then I'm going to go to Activate View up here on the ribbon, and now I'm basically working on that sheet. Or I'm sorry, working on that view. So I can move things around, kind of make edits to that view, without having to go all the way up here and double-clicking on the view itself. So I'm on the sheet, and I'm kind of moving things around, and that way I can see its relationship to the other views that I have on that sheet. Alright, so that's called basically Activate View. So what I do is I select the view on the options, or on the ribbon. I go to Activate View. I'm working on the sheet. Now to get out of here, because that's the other big thing, is to get out of the Activate View, just right-click, and it'll say Deactivate. For some reason, Deactivate doesn't appear on the ribbon by default, so you just have to right-click and deactivate. Alright, so that's basically activate, deactivate the views, moving those cursors, moving those things around. Now let me show you a little something about those elevations. Alright, this is kind of a common issue that I've seen on those elevations. These little squares with little triangle tops on them, those are your elevation views. Those are controlling those north, south, east, west elevations. Alright, so there's two parts to it. There's the square, and then there's the triangle. Now notice when I click the triangle, I get this little blue line here. This is basically the view plane for that elevation. So let me double click on the triangle. I can go to my north elevation. There's my north elevation. Alright. That blue line basically represents where I'm standing. Alright, if I make it wider, actually, let me make it narrower. Let me slide these two together there. Alright, I'm going back to that elevation now. Notice how it crops the view. Alright, so those are basically this little blue line here. The extent of that blue line basically controls the extent of your view. Okay. Now, if that blue line, let me just move, I can actually move the blue line itself. If I pull that blue line into the building like that, it becomes a section. See how it cut into the building? Alright, so let me show you one trick here. This is something that happens basically to pretty much everybody. Okay, pick the triangle. Yeah, you got it. To get that blue line. Yeah, pick the triangle, and then you'll get the blue line. Okay, well, I can kind of talk to you about that a little bit later. So here's the blue line. Okay, when you move this thing, if I pick this, so here's my blue line, kind of going right through the middle of the triangle. All right, now I'm going to pick the square, and I'm going to move that square out here. Move it out there, just for that. Now I picked that triangle, and notice the blue line stayed in place because I picked the triangle. I'm sorry, because I picked the square only. The blue line stayed where it was. Okay? So now, if I pick both of them, and I move it back, and I pick the triangle again, the blue line moved as well. So if you want to move those views, make sure that you pick both the triangle and the square at the same time. Because if you just pick the square, it's going to keep the blue line where it is. If you pick, what I've had is like a lot of people's like, hey, they do that same thing, the same thing I just did, and then they go to their elevation view, and it's like, where'd my elevation go? I deleted. They think they deleted their elevation, and then they go into panic mode, and it's not a pretty sight. A lot of crying, a lot of anger. So when you do that, so just pick both of them, pick both the triangle and the square, and then move them both at the same time. Alright, so let me pick that triangle again. I'm going to move my blue line back into place. Alright, so that's the other thing too, is make sure that your blue line doesn't intersect with your building or it'll cut the building. So, alright, so that's kind of a big one that I see. So when you do these, now in the preview, on here, just know that, see how it doesn't show those elevation tags? What they did was they turned them off in this particular view, but I want to make sure that you have those elevation tags on there, and I'll show you why here in a second here. All right, let me go back to my view. All right, so these are your elevation tags. These are essentially cameras. And I go back to my sheet. All right, 101, tiny house. Now I'm going to add one of my elevations. Now notice these are all blank. Okay. Now when I add my elevation onto that sheet, so let me go to my east elevation, drop it on the sheet, click like that. Notice it fills out the tag. It says that is going to be detail number 4 on sheet A101. And sure enough, detail number 4 on A101 is my east elevation. Alright, so that's very important. If I were to change this, say I want to change this to, I don't want it to be number 4 anymore, I want to change that to 50. Alright, and I highlight it and I update it. It updates the tag automatically. So the two have an intelligent link back and forth between that. So that's why I want you to make sure that you have your elevation tags on your floor plans so that we can do just that. So I can see the tag, and so that we can see that, you know, when I add in my north elevation now onto this sheet, it fills out that tag for me. North elevation, sheet detail 5, A101. Alright? Trying to think anything else I can think of on these things here. So it gets a little frustrating that, because it's not very intuitive, the whole sheet layout thing. You know, the idea that you have to actually select the view in order to move this, in order to edit the length of that line is not very intuitive. So some of this stuff is a little frustrating. It could get a little frustrating. So let's think here. Anything else I can think of? I think that's about it. Now with the title block, though, you can edit some of that information. Excuse me. You can edit some of this information on the actual title block. So the title block here is pretty intelligent. You can go to project number and type in, you know, whatever for that. That's my project number. Issue date. We can call this 9/27-13. All right. If we were to create multiple sheets now, if we create a second sheet, all this information would then be updated on that second sheet. So you're filling out information for the project, not just this title block. All right, and so that's about it. So that's about all I can think of. So that's basically setting up a sheet in Revit.